old cowboy went riding out one dark and windy day. On the ridge he rested as he went along his way. When all at once the mighty herd went thundering through the sky. He heard the riders coming high, and he heard their mournful cry. Why'd you get frigging engaged then?
What you got to realise is there's thousands of them out there. I mean, birds are like the Chinese army. Once you jump a few, you think that's it for a while. And there's a whole new battalion comes over the hill.
Radio 1 News. At midnight, Leslie Cohen reporting. The actor and pop singer Gary Holton has died. The star of TV's Auf Wiedersehen Pet was found dead at a friend's home in London today. Tony Grant reports.
Gary, who played Cockney womanizer Wayne in the TV series, was just 33. Yet he'd been on the screen for 20 years. He was once the Milky Bar Kid in the adverts. His was the voice saying, "Don't forget the fruit gums, Mum." Later, he was the singer with rock band The Heavy Metal Kids. He was in the films Quadrophenia and Breaking Glass, and on the West End stage in the hit musical Pump Boys and Dinettes. But Gary's image attracted the Fleet Street gossip writers, and stories of his women, his drinking, his alleged drug-taking appeared frequently. Tonight, his close friend John B told newsmen he was a smashing guy when you got to know him.
And that's all from Radio 1 for now. Join us again for the early show at 6 o'clock with Mark Page. From all of us here, a very good night.
Right, so no knowledges, and this one is the Gary Holton story, right? And this is one I've wanted to do for quite a while, and that the Gary Holton story. And I've switched the TV on and that, and they start repeating Auf Wiedersehen Pet, right? Which, if you know Auf Wiedersehen Pet, it's a TV program from the 1980s, and I think it frequently tops the polls and that as a sort of top favourite television program of Britain of all time and all that, right? It's like quality television show. I think it was made in 1983, right? And it is a good show and all that, right? And especially in relation to the sort of garbage that they produce now, right? But the Gary Holton story, right? So Gary Holton is an actor, right, who was in this Auf Wiedersehen Pet, right? The Auf Wiedersehen Pet, if you're not sure about it, I think it's obviously if you're British you'll know about it. Maybe it's Australian you'll know about it. But maybe if you're American, you'll not have seen it. But it's a story of 7 bricklayers, right? A couple of carpenters and electricians and all that. They're builders, right? They're builders on a building site. And there's 7 of them, so it's like the Magnificent 7 type idea, which is a frequent sort of meme within it, right? And it's about some of them are like Geordies, and a couple of different ones, from different locations around Britain, right? Very popular series, right? Always very popular and stayed popular throughout the years and all that, right? And Gary Holton was the Londoner character, right? The Cockney character. Played a character called Wayne, right? And Wayne. So what happened with the Gary Holton, right, was after they made these series, I think it was like 2 initial series of this program, right? They did revive it later on, like about 15 years later or something. They revived it, minus Gary Holton, right? But it was rubbish, like type of thing, right? It was like not the same program at all, right? The classic series remained the sort of 2 early series that they made, right? So Gary Holton, right, was an actor in this. He played Wayne, right? And Wayne was the sort of character who was a bird puller, right? He was into promiscuous sex, and he was always pulling birds and discos and stuff like that, right? So Gary Holton, right, in the supposedly in real life anyway, right, supposedly died early, right, of a heart attack. I think, I'm not sort of looking at the internet now, so I haven't got the ready information in front of us, but I think he was about 40, right. No doubt the sort of exact age will be a coded number, because we know how it goes when they do a hex out in media of like an actor or personality type of thing, media personality, right. It's always a hex. It's always a hex out for ritualistic purposes, for the purpose of like leading the society in the direction they wanted to go and all that, right. So he died, right, supposedly, and he was about 40 odd, early 40s, if I remember correct, right. So remember, now with the new knowledge, of course, we know that all these actors are basically eunuchs or T's, right, and the sort of eunuch philosophy dominates the sort of logic behind it all, right. So Gary Holton, right, was meant to have died early, right, and sort of look at the name halt, right, Holton. So if you come to a halt, right, you come to a sudden stop, right. So it's like the halt idea, you come to a sudden stop, right, and there's no sort of coincidence, right, because Gary Holton, like I say, was the character who played this sort of sex character, right. He was into promiscuous sex and all this, right, and so he's the one that dies the early death. So it's like the idea of the sex, the promiscuous person and all that comes to a bad end, right, and an early sort of grave and all that, right. So the reasoning behind the sort of the hexo could be, that these actors' personalities get health problems, right, because they're T's, so there's going to be a lot of health problems associated with that, right, and a lot of them display health problems in their later years, right, for the very process of being a T, because obviously it's unnatural, and it sort of brings about health risks and all that, right. As we say with other different characters, like in the media, right, there's for example, I just learned the other day, right, there's one called Sarah Carwood, right, Sarah Carwood, who was a very popular TV personality back in my days when I was a young and around about 20 years old, and the Sarah Carwood was on the TV, on a load of programs, fronting a load of shows, music programs, and she was on something called the Girly Show, right. Obviously a tea drinker, right, but it was something called the Girly Show, where they were sort of masculinizing the sort of feminine idea, right, and they created this idea about ladettes. So it was like, the sort of the idea of the female becoming more masculine and aggressive and all this, right. So obviously again, Masonic type of a scenario, right. All brainwashing and sort of leading the sort of society and all that, right. And the Sarah Carwood, right, I just noticed the other day off the internet, the Sarah Carwood has developed the bowels problem. Like she's obviously about 40 odd now or whatever, right. Has put on a lot of weight. You know what I mean? Doesn't look the same pretty sort of young girl that she looked then, right. And has developed a bowels problem, right. So it's like a bowel is played up, and she on the sort of the thing I looked at, this media story, it said my bowel has tried to kill me, right, which is like pretty funny, pretty weird, you know what I mean? But like the bowel problem, because that seems to be specific to MTFs, like a type of bowel problems. These MTFs get bowel problems, right? So you can figure that one out as why that might be, like, you know what I mean? And also spine problems, they seem to get spine problems, bowel problems, and a lot of sort of inner organs problems like kidneys and liver and all this type of idea, right? Because obviously with the T's, so there's a lot of health risk involved in being a T, right? So the idea why they might retire these personalities, right, could be an underlying health problem, right? But when they're reported through the media, it's always part of a ritualistic hex, right? Hex out, and they're sort of using it for purposes of leading the society and you know, basically brainwashing the society and the sort of people within the society to sort of lead them along the path they want them to go, right? So these are eunuchs. So they're basically leading along that type of idea, right? And about that same time, right, when this Gary Holton was supposed to have died, right, of a heart attack, a couple of years later, whatever, he had the type of AIDS thing come in, right? So, like, you know, they were obviously on the offensive against the sort of promiscuous sex type idea, you know. I mean, ironically, like, because they had created it in the first place type of thing, you know, because they were exploiting naturals, and naturals type of, you know, lust for sex as they're seeing it, you know what I mean? So they sort of made the disco idea and the, you know, the sort of the TV entertainment in the sort of 70s and all that was like, you know, Carry On movies, On the Buses, Benny Hill, you know, where they were sort of exploiting the sort of what they perceived as the weakness of the natural, the sort of lust after the flesh, you know, like carnal lust and all that, right? But in the 80s, they sort of shifted the other way to sort of, you know, gone the other way and sort of say, well, this is the result of if you lust after sex, you basically, you know, you're going to meet a bad end, right? So, you know, we know that these people are eunuchs, so we can see where they're coming from, type of thing. A similar thing with like Sigmund Freud, right? Sigmund Freud is basically, when it comes to Sigmund Freud's type of psychoanalysis and all this, right? It's always that the problem is sex. It always boils back down to sex, right? It's the problem, see, it's the problem. So if you're a eunuch, that's the way that they view it. You see what I'm saying? Sex is the problem to get rid of and all that, right? To ultimately get rid of, right? So you had the Gary Holton coming to a sudden halt, right? Basically dying of a heart attack very early, right? Early 40s or whatever, right? So it's like anyone wants to die early 40s, you know what I mean? And it's like, this is the way to do it, see? The sort of so they had him as the sort of promiscuous sex person on this very popular show, right? Like, you know, you're talking about viewing figures of millions, like millions in Britain, like, you know. So it's like, you know, very popular, right? Everybody would have known who he was and all that, right? And they use it to sort of say, well, you know, if you're a promiscuous sex addict and all this, you meet a bad end. You see what I'm saying? So this is like the eunuch philosophy and all that, right? So they, you know, see, halt, see, comes to a sudden halt, right? Maybe he's always had it, you know, planned out in advance or whatever, you know what I mean? But because these people are very clever in the way that they sort of, you know, shape things and lead things along and all that, right? So, you know, that's the Gary Holton story, see what I mean? It's basically like a eunuch hex out. Of course, he probably wouldn't have died, like I say, he might have had underlying health problems. But simply what happened was, you know, basic retirement, a retirement from public life. And of course, if you think about it, these Masonic network basically extends to the whole planet, or the whole world or whatever, you know what I mean? So they can, you know, they can restart a new life anywhere, you know, anywhere they choose, basically, you know, Venezuela, Brazil, you know, see what I mean? Africa, Barbados, Caribbean islands. There's even places which are like totally off limits to any type of members of public and stuff, you know what I mean? It's just the way to do it. Another example of that is sort of Eric Bristow, right? Eric Bristow, the darts player, who was basically hexed out because he belonged to the past era, you know, the 70s and the sort of the early 80s, and he was like, you know, seen as a beer drinker, cigarette smoker, you know, into calling women birds and all that, you see what I mean? So it's like seen as sexist and belonging to a past era, see? So when the shift in era, they get rid of some of their old characters who've been very prominent characters in the formations of the earlier era, see? That's the way to do it. And then keep shifting to new eras, you know, and taking the sort of society along on the ride type of thing, you know what I mean? Riding the goat type of thing and all that, see? So that's basically the Gary Holton story, you see what I'm saying? The Gary Holton story, the moral type of idea, right? Remember that from the sort of Freemasonry, the moral is, if you have promiscuous sex and all this, you die early, you come to a bad end. You die of a heart attack or AIDS or something like that, you see what I'm saying? That's the way to do it. Shaping things, creating a society as they go along. See?